I don't
Mhm.
think our clients ever see the full value of our work.
I don't think so, right? They know what they want it to look like, but they're almost always surprised. Always like, "Oh my gosh, guess what? Oh my gosh, look what I did." "Oh my gosh, I just paid off a credit."
This is the Fearless Pricing Podcast, where we meet and talk about real life pricing experience. I'm your host, Filip Fucic.
Pricing is hard. This is a podcast for fearless professionals and those who would like to feel that way. It's an unfortunate truth that most service pricing is created using either guesswork or copying other people's guesswork. Hello, and welcome back to the Fearless Pricing Podcast, where we are going to talk about an interesting story told to us by Nichole Weaver, money management strategist and financial coach. Nichole, would you please first tell us something about yourself?
I'm a financial coach and a money management strategist. I primarily work with six-figure earners to help them manage their money in a way that they can reach their goals fast without sacrificing their quality of life. I find that a lot of six-figure earners lose track of what's happening with their money. And so getting them focused, getting them intentional and strategic so they can have a bigger impact with the amazing income that they've earned.
That's a really well-defined market, I have to say.
Mhm.
We met at your Business Peeps, a wonderful little, let's say, networking group, right, for North America. And it's been a long road since we first talked, but I'm curious to hear your story.
I've been in business for about 3.5 years, and this was about a year into business. I was still refining my offers, still kind of trying to figure out exactly what I liked doing for clients. And I had somebody post in a group and they said, "Man, it would be nice if someone could just do it for me, take over my money, pay my bills for me, give me an allowance." And I was like, I could do that, right? So we started talking. I kind of came up with a package of what I felt comfortable doing and pricing. And as we talked, it was a little bit out of her budget. So I adjusted a little bit and I dropped the price down. What I didn't realize I was going to do at that point was start offering those same services, the do done for you, pay your bills, do all the things at the same low dropped down price. And I did that for the next 2 years. And to the extent that I had three or four clients active with me doing almost all of the things, data entry, bill pay, I mean, crazy amount of stuff for a very, very low fee, relatively speaking. And so it was earlier this year, I started working with an offer strategist to figure out like how I could scale my business. And I went back and I looked at the original proposal that I had written for this offer of the done for you, and it was twice what I was currently charging.
Ouch.
And I don't know why my brain forgot that I was supposed to be charging so much more for it. But I found myself in a position where I was super hands on, very one to one, a lot of, day to day tasks for these clients at a rate that just was not going to do it for me. I couldn't scale to the income that I want doing that level of work for these clients at that price. And that was just kind of a moment for me. I was like, oh, so the clients I had, I adjusted either what I was doing for them or their pricing to make it make more sense for me to be able to focus more on actually scaling my business in a way that was sustainable because that was not at all.
So, do you still offer these services?
No, I do. To the clients I had, we adjusted
Mhm.
and I maintained some of them. I didn't want to kick everybody out, but not really. It's a very the threshold is pretty high. So to do complete done for you bookkeeping, all of the things is a multi four-figure investment because it's a lot of work on my part.
Well,
So
I mean,
as it should
as
be.
it should be. Absolutely.
Yeah. And when I get these seven-figure business owners, six-figure earners who really just need someone to make sure their money's doing what they want it to do, they're happy to pay it because then they can trust that the money's going where it needs to go, that the debt's getting paid off, that investments are happening. They're happy to pay it. So it's much better for me
Absolutely.
and them.
So there's several things here that have to do with discounts. And
We've talked about this
oh
before.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You were at one of my Q&A shows. I remember
Uh-huh.
that. So one of the things that is dangerous with discounts is that they're kind of addictive. firstly, the clients can say, "Oh, I got the first month for a lower fee because I bought that, you know, uh, the
Mm,
initial one." So of course, I'm only buying the second month or the quarter. I don't know if that was
mhm.
per month or per year or per quarter.
Yeah.
So that's one. The other is you get inertia because you know this one,
Mhm.
that this was the first client. It went down
Yeah.
with that price. And of course, next time, your brain says, I'm not really sure if the initial price will go, but this
Hmm.
goes, and then you do it again. And by then, you're already doing it that way.
Yeah,
So that's probably what happened there is pure inertia. And
for sure.
so the addictiveness, the inertia is one thing.
Yeah. We get a little too attached to the immediate outcome of the
Oh
sale,
yeah.
right? We get a little too attached to the yes, and we don't think bigger picture, longer term of what is this going to look like 2 years from now when, I'm trying to grow, I'm trying to make multiple five figures per month, and I can't because I'm spending 4 hours a week on this person for $400. Like, it doesn't work that way. You have to really think bigger picture and longer term and be okay with taking a no on those things in the short term.
If you can, yes, absolutely. Sometimes people don't have a choice, right? Sometimes they
Mhm.
don't. You need that client, you need to pay the bills. However, then it's probably a really good idea to leave at least 10% of your time to find something better. So
Mm,
never go all in with a discounted price that you had to, that you were forced into, basically, right? You
right.
had your back against the wall. That happens to all of us. And the important thing is you have some time from which you can get some short-term profitable things, which will
Mhm.
financially allow you to climb out.
And they have a lot of that has created some of that, monthly recurring revenue for me, which has been nice and has helped support what I'm trying to build, which has been nice. But when you look at how much work it is and how many hours you put in, eventually you have to adjust.
Yeah,
Like,
of course. Of
you just,
course. People think I got them at this price, and if I try to raise it, they'll just all leave. And this is
mhm.
usually not true. I mean, what happened when you
Yeah.
adjusted? Did,
Everybody was cool with it. Everybody was cool with it. One person I adjusted, I basically told her she was going to have to pay somebody else to do the data entry part, but I would do the consultation part. She was cool with that. So our price stayed the same, but my work went way down. Um, Another one, same thing. I'm not doing data entry anymore. We're just doing consultation, same price, no big deal. The other one, I actually did raise her up by a little bit because I had discounted her to begin with. And so I was like, at the very least, I need to raise you up to where I would have charged you originally, even though that price was still too low for me. But she
at
was
least
an existing client, and everybody was cool with it. So
yeah, and this is what usually happens. And you know why?
yeah,
Because you were undercharging. So
yes,
they knew in their heart of hearts they would be fine with paying more. So you say, no,
mhm,
I'm no longer charging 30, I'm now charging 40. I would have paid you 60,
yeah,
so fine. The second thing that I think we should mention here is discounting is much less painful if you do it on time box things which end. So
yeah,
retainers are a particularly bad thing to discount, right?
true, yes,
Because it compounds. So losing
hmm
$400 or $600 on a $1,000 service, fine. Losing that every month for the
every month,
foreseeable
yeah,
future, that's a lot, right?
right,
It's easy to say, and like I said, when you're in a vulnerable position or you're just you just like you said focused on the
hmm
immediate dread of
yeah,
people saying no, that's
yeah.
different. Just it's just a good thing to remember.
And like you said, when you're early on in your business and you're kind of up against the wall and you need the income, it's shiny object, right? It's like, ooh, I just created, $350 a month. You're like, okay, but how many hours a week are you spending to get that $350 a month? That's crazy for a scalable business.
Yep.
But in the short term, when you're growing, like it happens because we just need to make some moves and get some stuff
Yeah,
done.
it pays the bills, as they say.
Right.
Before we continue, I'd like to suggest two things. Firstly, if this is the first time you're tuning in, I'd love for you to subscribe and hear the next story in a week. And second, if you feel you could do with a little more fearless pricing content, look in the show notes for the link to the popular, short, and sometimes funny biweekly newsletter. That's it. Let's get back to the show. One more thing is, I usually say discounts are bad fish baits. They're probably not the best thing to get the client with. So some
Yeah.
extra service or something, or if you do, and sometimes you do, they're good to pair with a reason. Now, the reason doesn't have to be a work of art because people will. So today is Tuesday is a good enough reason, right? You're getting this first month for 50% off because today is Tuesday. 90% of people won't even raise an eyebrow. They'll just done, you know. So I like your dog. Our team won. Our team lost. Some politician is going to jail. It doesn't matter. People, because it's benefiting them, people will usually not question whatever reason you give them. However, they're much less likely to expect for the discount to continue because there's no reason anymore. So,
Mm,
okay, you can't pay this. You can pay that much for the first I don't know, quarter. Okay, so I really want to support you in your business, and for the first quarter, I'm going to have it, and then
mm,
after the first quarter, I won't be able to do that anymore. But by then, you will see just how much money this saves you,
yeah.
and if it doesn't save you enough for you to pay the full price, then that doesn't make any sense either way, right?
Right.
Most people will say yes to that
Yeah.
because they can always say no, this is not working, or if they see this is working, wonderful, why wouldn't they pay,
Right.
right? So
Especially if you actually get the result and the ROI that you're telling them that you're going to get. Because if you're pricing appropriately, the ROI should be significantly higher than your price, anyways.
yes, oh no, um, for sure. um, this is usually true because not only do people not buy unless they can see more value that they pay for, they don't see much of the
Mm,
value.
yeah.
Somebody who is in financial trouble will not see the whole range of changes that you can bring to their life. A high earner that leaks cash cannot really grasp the change that can be an outcome of working with you. So you have to communicate enough value for them to see
Hmm.
that paying you is better than not getting the value that they can see, and that's just a small part of the value that they're actually going to get. So I don't
Hmm.
think our clients ever see the full value of our work.
I don't think so. I think
It
that
doesn't.
I have a few that can dream about it, right? They know what they want it to look like. They know what they want to create. But they're almost always surprised or almost always like, oh my gosh, guess what? Oh my gosh, look what I did. Oh my gosh, I just paid off a credit. Like literally had one come to me like, I have no idea how I'm ever going to get out of this debt. I'm making $155,000 a year. I should be able to get out of debt. This is ridiculous. We put a strategy in place, put a plan in place, created a system for her to use. And literally within 3 weeks, she was like, I'm paying off this credit card this month. Like it, you go from I have no idea to there. And at that point, then they can look back and go, oh my gosh, well worth what I paid. Right. But you're right in the moment, especially when this is one of the biggest things I come up against just from a marketing perspective is it's hard when you're having trouble with money to justify spending money to get help with your money.
Yes.
And so there's a lot, I tell a lot of stories, a lot of case studies, a lot of examples, a lot because people need to see like what is actually possible when that happens. A client net worth jumped by 5 grand within 30 days of us working together.
Um, stories are magic here because
Yeah.
yeah, and especially when there's a lot of shoulds. You mentioned
Hmm.
like I
Yeah.
should be able, so that uncovers a lot of shame. that's
Mhm.
like I'm living a wasteful life and I'm not even enjoying it. And where I see shoulds is, I'm working my hands to the bone and I don't even feel it. I feel the work. I don't feel any money that I'm actually getting out of it. And this is because,
Mhm.
in my case, because their prices are too low. So they have many
Yeah.
clients who want to work with them, but they're too hands-on and too attached to hourly billing. And
Yeah. Yes. Don't do hourly.
yeah, don't don't do hourly.
This was a conversation that we had, is this idea of like, if I can show you how to increase your net worth by $10,000, but it takes me 12 months to show you how to do that. Is that more or less valuable than if I can show you in 1 hour?
We had that
Right?
conversation.
Like, yeah, like if I can show you in 1 hour how to increase your net worth by 10 grand, that's just as valuable, if not more valuable, because it takes way less time to make it happen. So the hourly rate thing is just goofy.
Absolutely.
Unless you're doing an actual physical service for somebody for a certain number of hours that,
The UX people call this the labor illusion, where
mm,
people are more likely. So you've got programs. So I'm told you've got programs, computer programs that could do something like render a picture or find something instantly, but they
mm,
give you a progress bar because you trust the results, the results more if you can
mm,
see they had to work for it, right? Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so you can sometimes apply the labor illusion. I had a guest here in the show. He was early um, in the website making game,
Mm,
20 years ago, 25 maybe. Um, and he discovered templates, and basically nobody did templates yet. So
mm,
early in the templates game, and he could do a web page in like, I don't know, 6 hours, but then he
yeah.
couldn't charge for it because people
Right.
would say, you didn't work on it. And he proceeded not to work on it, just said it takes 3 weeks, and then he could properly charge for it. He
Yeah.
didn't even charge it. He charged like everybody else, but he couldn't uncover that he didn't sweat for it, because it's the labor illusion. I mean, why do they really
Yeah.
care if we sweat? They don't, right? If you can
Mm,
do your magic and help somebody, like you said, in weeks, not months, that should be worth more. To some people,
right.
it is. To many people, it isn't yet. Thinking like we're still thinking about commoditized things, commoditized work, and like
Mhm.
physical work. Because in physical work,
Yeah.
look, if you worked for 6 hours, I can see um, the the hole that you dug.
The
I
whole,
can
yeah.
see
Right.
the street that you swept. I can see the files that were formed, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like that in or
Mhm.
consulting, or even things like architecture or legal advice or CPAs. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if somebody has a template and you fit into that template, and they just give you the answer because it was calculated by a computer in seconds. It's the result, right? So
Right. That's so interesting that you say that, because I 4-week program sells exponentially better than my VIP day. I think there's something about, can we really get all of this done in a day? Can you really create all of that in a day? Can you really make all of that happen? Can we really make all these decisions in a day? And I'm like, well, yes, I can for this thing, right? But yeah, it's that let's work for it. Let's see what happens over a month. Let's go week by week. Let's do one piece at a time. Like, people are like, yeah, let's do that. And that's, like I said, I have clients whose net worth went up by 5 grand in 30 days. Could I have done all of that for her in one day? Probably. Probably, and got her set up for it. But
you can see it, but they can't. And
right.
this is completely normal, right? You can see it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, people come to me and say, I've been working in this industry for 15 years. If I could have charged more, I would know that. No, you wouldn't.
You don't know until you do,
Yes.
right? Like, you don't know what you can charge until you charge it and somebody pays it and you go, oh,
Oh.
okay.
Mm.
And especially when like the whole thing where you say what the price is and they get this like, oh, okay, cool. Like they thought it was going to be so much more, right? You're like, oh, wow, okay. Or they just don't. They're like, yeah, that's worth it. And you just don't know. That was one of the things well early on in my business that somebody told me that if I was batting 1,000 on sales calls, if I was getting 100% conversion on my sales calls, then my prices were too low. And I was like, oh, but I like when people say yes. Like, okay, but wouldn't you rather get, 75% yeses on a price that's, double or triple? I'm like, oh yeah,
I tell that to people
you would.
all the time. So unless at least 20% of people are saying no, your price is probably too low.
Yeah.
And especially if they say yes within the first 2 or 3 seconds. And this is why, again, kids, you don't send your offer through email. You do after you
Yeah.
talk to them. That's
Yeah.
a regular thing um, to do. Right. I'm interested in, you said this is selling better because people have the illusion of, do you think if you could add something that they have to do, even if you don't necessarily need it, that you could fix this? So you can have a VIP day, but you have to fill in these forms or write me.
Yeah. I do have that. I just don't know. Maybe I haven't communicated that as clearly, but it is, they have to do a cash flow audit for me and fill out all of the stuff before I can,
If
do
you emphasize this, it will work better.
that
You know
makes
about the classic story with cake mix, right?
sense.
Where that was like the late 50s, early 60s, I think. And the cake mix didn't sell because it was too little work. So any woman worth her salt wouldn't dream of buying that, because that means that she was lazy, right? But then they made it worse by removing the egg out of it, so you had to put it out of the box and crack an egg in it, and that worked. So maybe present the conditions a little worse than they need to be.
Yeah.
That can work. That has worked historically.
Right.
When people don't understand, then they very often try to catch up by embracing irrelevant thoughts, irrelevant signs, right?
Yeah.
They're going to look at your shoes and say, okay, if she can afford those shoes, then she's probably knows what she's talking about. Maybe you're a con person, right? And this is how they get you anyway.
Mm.
But this is what, so when they don't understand, they'll try to figure it out, and
Yeah.
sometimes giving them a crutch will help them understand quicker. So get into it
Yeah.
and then understand quicker and say, oh yeah, that crutch was really unnecessary. But at the time, the choice is between losing them and giving them a crutch. So maybe a crutch will help. I don't know. What do you think is the most important thing that you changed in your pricing since you started working?
Removing the emotion from it. I feel like this price for this much work, that feels okay. And I actually have like a, not like an hourly rate standard, but like at least one to look at and go, is that going to get me where I want to be? Like, how much work is this? And knowing where I want to be income wise and how many hours I want to work, and kind of using that as like a base of, if this is going to take 6 hours of my time, then it needs to be at least $1,000 because my time is worth whatever it is, right? And then of course I go from there and I look at ROI and I look at what they're getting, and occasionally we'll use the 10x rule, but I actually have rules around it now, as opposed to, well, would I pay that? I guess. I don't know. Does that feel good? Like, I think that's good. I've removed the emotion and I actually have rules around how I create my pricing now. And that has helped so much. Like,
That's great
so
advice,
much.
because the would
Yeah.
I pay is greatly susceptible to the curse of knowledge. To
Yeah.
once you know something, you can barely think in a way that ignores it. That's not really
Hmm.
possible. Um, the experiment where they when they figured that out was they had somebody hum "Happy Birthday," and
Mm.
they asked them how many people, because everybody knows the melody of "Happy Birthday," how many people would get what you're humming, and
Mm.
that was always very high, so at least 50%, and the
Yeah.
result was about 10.
Mm.
So you wouldn't say so, no, not all people are melodically aligned,
Mm.
but still, people get frustrated. Like, how can you not know this, right? How is that
Yeah.
possible? It's the most basic thing that every kindergarten knows. But yeah, once you know what you're humming, um, you're dead to the world of people not knowing what you're humming, right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
so asking yourself, would I, is this worth $100 to me? Of course not. I
Hmm.
know how to do this, and I'm not threatened
Right.
by it. My ego is not threatened by it. Nobody's complaining about this. I can do it in seconds. Why would that be? Why would a second be worth $100, right? However, people who don't know
Mm.
that, who need that, right? A trick that I like to, I mean, the trick, it's a technique that I like to talk about is how to get prices aligned to purchasing power parity, because we live
Mm.
in a global world and it's all right and noble to charge everybody exactly the same when you're doing it within the same town. However,
Mm.
uh, you know, Cleveland prices are not exactly New York prices,
Yeah.
right? And
Hmm.
not to talk about, you know, I don't know, Croatia to Australia, right?
Yeah.
And most of my clients are Australian. So um, these kinds of differences necessitate different kind of thinking, right? So
We even like I have a lot of Canadian clients and some people will just be like, no, it's the same amount. It's just a conversion rate. I'm like, but $100 US is $140 Canadian. The purchasing power of their Canadian dollar is very similar to the US dollar in that one for one, right? So $140 actually is more money in Canada than $100 is in the US in that sense, right? So you still have to kind of factor in a little bit of that. Most of my clients are in Canada. I have like
and
five. I don't know how that
people
happened.
use
I think this network.
sorry, and people use the strength of currency as a crutch,
Mm.
because the strongest currency in the world at the moment, I think, is Kuwaiti dollar, and it's very strong. But people they don't have paychecks which are high thousands.
Hmm.
It's so average pay is much lower. So it's not like they
Yeah.
have the highest purchasing power parity because of it. They don't. It's just a
Right.
very strong currency, and that has barely anything to do with purchasing power parity. Inflation, blah blah blah. So I'm not going to go into the economics of it, but people use that as a crutch, and sometimes
Hmm.
it kind of works. Teaching somebody how to do purchasing power parity comparisons, to at least know that if I'm charging from Australia to the US, I'm probably undercharging, because what
Mm.
I think is $2,000 US, what that would mean, that's like, I don't know, a hefty part of the paycheck, right?
Mm.
Okay. In the US, it's like 40% lower than that.
Yeah.
So you're actually coming off as suspiciously cheap and you think you're expensive. So
Mm.
doing that takes me a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
However, that can mean multiple hundreds of dollars each time that somebody makes a sale. That's
Yeah.
valuable. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter that I now know the trick, I now have the tool, and I can help somebody do that in minutes. It's pretty valuable information, right? Asking myself, is this would I pay for this? Of course not. But would other
Yeah.
people? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I just wanted to recap a bit. We heard your story of the sticky discount, right?
Yeah.
Which was internally sticky as well as externally sticky. So the client expected it, and you carried on using it, right?
Yeah.
I absolutely did that. I retained a client with a discount and then carried it on to other clients. But so
Yeah.
I can absolutely understand this. And thank you for coming forward with this is what this show is all about, right? And then we talked about general don'ts of discounts, like the um, don't discount on a perpetual thing, or give them a reason which will make it expire and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then several things about client value perception, chief among them the value illusion, the labor illusion. So people think it's worth more because they think more goes into that, as if
Mhm.
inputs right now are the only thing that matters, because it took you a while, it took you quite a few inputs to get to a place where you can do a VIP day and solve it all in a day. It's just
Mhm.
the immediate inputs um, are no longer required in high amounts because they're all in the past. That's the part of the iceberg that people don't see, right?
Right.
Cool. And then I think the very good advice of removing yourself from evaluating, so removing emotions, as you said, is a really good advice at the price setting. It's so wonderful to talk to another money person. I enjoy.
We're not perfect. I've made my share of mistakes, but I learn.
Absolutely.
It's like you said, it's the tip of the iceberg, right? I've learned so much from my experience in my business and the work I've done with clients. And like you learn and you get better over time.
And we all do them. This is what
Mhm.
I like to emphasize. So I'm a pricing guy. I'm a pricing guy because I did all of the mistakes already, right?
Yeah.
And you're a highly qualified money person that works with, six-figure earning clients, and you did something like that. What chance does a coach get? A mindset coach or GDPR consultant, or that doesn't really matter, right? So of course we all do those, right? So thank you very
Yeah.
much for joining us and sharing your story. Um, is there somewhere where people can search for your stuff?
Yep. Easiest way to find me is my website. You can email me. There's a question box at the bottom. Just get direct in touch.
I'll share that in the show notes. Right.
Perfect.
Thank you for being a part of the story. And to you, dear listener, see you next time on What I Should Have Charged. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you would like to hear more, simply subscribe. Until next time, your host, Filip Vojic.